Welcome everyone to our LawPAC meeting today on June 12th. First order of business today is the minutes, approval of those and discussion of them. So is there any motion to approve the minutes of 4/18/2024?
So moved. I'll second that.
Second that. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, unanimous approval. The second is the consent agenda. Hopefully everyone had a chance to look over the financial report. Is there any discussion on that at this time? So let's have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Unanimous approval. Next is we welcome Brady Burns from Skelton, Tainter, and Abbott to give us a little bit of information about representation for LawPAC by Skelton Tainter.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, and if Amy gets here, she can jump in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me first. I believe I've met some of you kind of out in the wild, but it's good to see everyone here in your LawPAC capacity. My name is Brady Burns. I'm an associate over at Skelton, Tainter, and Abbott. Really wanted to come in today just to both introduce myself to the commission as well as kind of reintroduce the firm to the commission. I know that in the past, James Pross, Jim, as we affectionately call him, had been your primary liaison between the commission and our law firm. I've worked closely with Jim in the past. We actually served on the Auburn City Council together way back in the day. That's when I first met him. But we both, like Jim, I share his passion for local government as well as for local environmental issues here in Lewiston, Auburn. I actually grew up 2 streets over from AvCog, so it's interesting to finally be in the building. So, but I know that in the recent past, we have had fewer opportunities to both interact with the board and really just undertake regular work. I know with Jim's transition out of STA, joining practice with his wife over in Lewiston, I hear he's having a great time over there. I know that they're just in a period of transition. We like to make sure that the lines of communication remain open. For those of you who may not have been on the board when STA was conducting more irregular work, I know certainly there's been ongoing legal items that the commission's been dealing with, that the firm has been conflicted out of, and other things that you guys might be dealing with. But we are and remain your counsel, and are happy to work with you in whatever capacity the commission might ultimately find a need for. So I'm happy to answer any questions either about myself or about the firm for those of you who may not be familiar with us, and also just to generally ensure that the door remains open and that the lines of communication remain clear, because we value the work that the commission does and our relationship with you.
So I first got here, Brian Dench was counsel.
Yeah.
Is he still at the firm? Or?
Brian retired, I believe, in 2019 or 2020. And Brian, who, for those of you who have never met him, was an institution both at STA and in Lewiston, Auburn when it came to municipal law and for better or worse, the alphabet soup of interlocal agencies that we have here in the Twin Cities. Jim worked with Brian in the last several years that Brian was transitioning toward retirement, and I think from around 2020 to just toward the end of last year, Jim had kind of taken over that book of business, and as Jim transitioned out, Amy Dietrich and I have been serving in that role now as well. So So Brian is no longer at the firm, although I hear he's enjoying his retirement, the last I heard. So
He did write most of the agreements that this organization's following.
I was going to say, I know that our firm has represented at least the water district going back, I believe, to the 80s with Brian. And I think right from the creation of WAPEC, dating back to, I think, 91 or 93, I know that Brian was heavily involved from that time as well. This is Amy Dietrich, one of my colleagues at STA. I believe some of you may know her as well. But yeah, we're just talking about the firm and answering any questions that the commissioners might have for us.
Wonderful. Nice to meet everyone.
Nice to meet you.
Meet some people for not the first time.
So I don't know what questions you can answer legally, but it has been the case where we've recently found that you have been conflicted out. And I don't know if you foresee that continuing on a regular basis. I mean, obviously it depends on what advice we're asking you for, but that is something that is of interest to us because we need someone that's going to be able to give us legal counsel pretty regular, well, when we need it. So I don't know if you have any insight into that or not.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. I know, Amy, you've done a lot of work in this space as well. One of the blessings and the curses of STA being both a local law firm and pretty highly integrated into the workings of the Twin Cities is that, one, we have a ton of institutional knowledge of the work and the organizations and how they relate to each other. But when there are instances where conflicts arise as between those groups, there's a higher likelihood that there might be a lurking conflict with us by virtue of being a local firm with that footprint that we have. So I know, my understanding is that in the recent past, a lot of the work that you've been looking for has fallen into a similar bucket to that. But outside of that, I think our firm would continue to be able to serve in the role that it has historically, which is serving as both your general counsel and point of contact, and also working with you as specific issues arise. Anytime there is a specific issue where there's an adverse party, any law firm will have to do a conflict check. And I think again by virtue of both our prominence in the community and our geography, if it's a hyperlocal issue, there is a chance that those conflicts can arise.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, and in the general course, we do a ton of work with similar organizations, including the Water District, and are able to navigate those waters, so to speak, as they come.
Oh, what a bad.
I know. I'm a fan of the terrible fun.
Can I just
Yeah.
put just some finer specificity on
Mhm.
that? So primarily the legal work that I understand you've been doing recently, both with the Eaton PUD and then I understand Amanda Meter has also been working with you maybe a little more informally. Was the result of the organization potentially being adverse to the Auburn Water District, Auburn Water and Sewer District, which is also a longtime SDA client.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as your legal needs are not going to be potentially adverse to the water district, I don't foresee that being an issue. We don't represent the city of Auburn, we don't represent the city of Lewiston,
Okay.
we don't represent the Lewiston Public Works or their water district.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think is that limited issue where you've been seeing so many conflicts over the last few years. That's why that's been an issue. But there's no conflict generally with giving any legal advice relating to corporate issues that you have,
Mhm.
specific parcels, leases, zoning, that kind of information.
Okay, thank you.
How about mine at Hebron, Buckfield, and Turner? Do you guys do municipal work with them too, or?
We do represent the town of Minot. We do
Minot.
not represent Hebron or Buckfield. I think that was the third one you said.
Or-
Turner, I'm
or-
sorry. We don't represent Turner either.
So if we were to want to modify our interlocal agreement, specifically how this entity was created, do you see an issue be able to support this group in that endeavor.
No.
No. Okay.
I wanna see what the changes are that you'd
I
wanna
don't think
make,
it's
but,
contentious, it would be,
Yeah.
parties at the table looking to make a modification or addendum or something like that. I mean, we've got, I don't think it's a highly desirable, but we have so many other agreements, it's like, it becomes cumbersome managing all the agreements.
Yeah.
I know there's some discussion the last couple of years of changing some of it, so that's why I bring that up. Yeah, I think historically, I knew Brian Dench and worked with him and other things, so it's good to see new faces and look forward to working with you.
Other questions?
Just that skeleton in the closet. Brian Dench was, with Jim, pretty adamant that the Auburn Water District could enact ordinance and enforce those in the upper watershed towns. And we have recently been told that we can't do that as a water district. Which for us is kind of unfortunate, because if we can't get cooperation from them, we thought we were given the authority to protect our lake from upper watershed pollution. So maybe the most current, we got a letter on that, the most current, without Eaton Peabody. Maybe that could be provided to them, and you guys can check, maybe go back, see what Brian and Jim was thinking. I don't know if that's gonna be something the commission wants to do, but I think, any loss of power by any of the water organizations is something we should just maybe have a second opinion on.
That's a good point. It's an excellent point.
You guys have all the records.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in preparation for this meeting, I was going back through and to Jim's credit and his record keeping, he had a very robust presentation that I absorbed, I think, from 2021, that I think back then he did a pretty deep dive with you guys regarding not only your founding documents, but also an overview of the scope of your authority and how this organization slots into that larger framework and working towards the mission of protecting the watershed. This is a unique organization and one that is both has a very specific remit, but also a very broad area of responsibility, both geographically as well as within your founding documents and your bylaws, the scope of your authority as it's laid out there. So it's always interesting to work with bodies like this, but those questions of where does your authority begin and end, those are bread and butter municipal issues, and I know that. Like you said, we have stuff in our records already. Just going back looking through Jim's old work, but I know that it seems like it's been an ongoing conversation and one I think we continue to have.
we can also share that information too with Eaton Peabody.
Absolutely.
Ask two lawyers their opinion, they're gonna give you two different opinions.
That's right. Maybe not three.
So both Mike and Kevin are co-clerks now, again.
I'm a
No.
commissioner,
Just
You're a
me.
commissioner, no longer co-clerk.
as public works
Right,
director,
public
as a,
Do
Yeah.
we need a co-clerk now?
that's in the works.
Okay.
I think we have a vacant co-clerk position.
Michael, carry it. It's okay.
I think I owe you a dinner.
I've been carrying it for a while.
No, it's not. Grady, I'd met you before, Amy. I don't think we've ever been face to face. It's nice
No,
to meet you as
mostly
well.
phone calls, I think.
Yep. But yeah, no, it's been a lot of change in the last 3 to 5 years. Not only in staffing personnel, as Kevin alluded to, there's vacancies everywhere. City administrator, water and sewer superintendent over there. We've had changeover in our superintendent, assistant super. And so on, and there's been a lot of turnover on the boards. And so I think the work that Jim did in 2021 was almost more of a kind of re-education for some of the new commissioners coming on of, well, what are our powers and authorities?
Yeah.
And there's been a lot going on between the two communities and the watershed in the last 2 to 3 years, really asking big questions, and obviously there's been some challenges. We still have a lawsuit going on that we're working through, but so it has made it more difficult, and it makes it difficult when, okay, so we can't go to Skelton Container on that, and then I know we had that Amanda Meter, but she's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
She
doesn't do litigation, she
Yeah.
just does municipal.
Yeah, so
And we haven't engaged with her further after the initial.
Yeah, it's been over a year or so since we've had any involvement with her. So the commission really hasn't had anyone, and we felt like we didn't have anybody, even though we still had you. It's just, well, we can't use you for that. So yeah, but no, I think this was good to get a reintroduction and a familiarity. And I know the most recent thing, there was a TD Bank issue that we were having. And again, that was just something else that you wound up being conflicted out on. And it's like the reference that you had gave, I called that person twice and I never got a response back. So it's like, Amanda Meter's not answering. We can't. Who are we supposed to use?
That's frustrating.
It is frustrating, and I
Yeah.
feel, the commissioners look at me as the clerk to get answers on these things, and if I strike out finding an available attorney, that's not easy. And then where do I go? How do you find one that's not conflicted between Lewiston, Auburn, City of Auburn, all these other entities? It's not an easy thing. Anyways, but this is good. So.
Sorry, I don't know if that's my phone. I have a new phone that I'm not very good at using. It's like this weird. Yeah, don't do it. If you get sold on this, don't fall pressure.
Okay.
That's terrible. Well, I would encourage anybody to reach out to us if you have any issues, and to your point, Mike, if there is some sort of conflict thing, we can always help you find somebody else as well. And if at first we don't succeed, we'll keep trying.
Okay.
And to go back to what you were saying, Dan, in terms of the, those powers and responsibilities questions, and as you alluded to, Mike, I think, one thing that is always useful for council to be able to provide, especially to boards that have, a rolling membership with, either different terms or people who are just coming on who may not be fully familiar with the documents, or even, maybe this is the first board that someone has been on, having just kind of ongoing, whether it's, annual or every, biennium, just a general boardsmanship training, reminders of what your, what this organization does, what your roles are as commissioners, and then, general stuff, changes in the law, FOA, kind of all of the little things that it's always useful to just have an ear out for, and as officials on a public entity, it's just good to kind of keep those muscles limber in terms of, understanding the general legal framework. So that's something that we're always more than happy to provide.
We have that 3-ring binder that we all have, but we haven't had an update in a while, so it could be an insert, because those binders are really handy for the history.
Well, especially with a couple new board members coming on now, maybe it's a good time to think about doing that.
Yeah, maybe in the fall.
Yeah.
I know when I first joined the city council, the number of unknowns was staggering to me, and I only very slowly started to discover kind of the known unknowns by the time I was wrapping up my first term. And it can be daunting, especially for a new member. So having just having something in place to help integrate folks in, I'm more than happy to help however we can.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was nice seeing everyone or meeting them for the first time.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
I'm sure we'll be in touch. Have the rest of your meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Take us if you go out these doors.
Okay.
Just a quick,
The front doors
quick
will be
left.
locked.
Okay.
This one won't be.
yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is public comment. Anyone from the public?
I
Yes.
think I'm the only one.
You are the only one.
Camille, I'd like to just offer a brief update on the status of the Watershed ordinance enactment in Auburn.
Maybe for the video and the meeting, you could just introduce yourself by name.
Stephen Beal at 575 Johnson Road in Auburn.
Thank you.
The matter was brought before the City Council, which passed a new watershed ordinance in December, but as soon as that ordinance was passed, it was recognized that there were some problems with it, and the new council on the 1st of January directed the city manager to direct the staff to engage a group of stakeholders to attempt a series of revisions to the ordinance. As I believe most of you are aware, that group was formed in January and was then fairly shortly divided into two working subgroups, one which addressed septic design, installation, setbacks, materials, and an inspection program for existing septic systems. And Erica, Dan, Mike, and I were on that subcommittee. And the other subcommittee was to address agricultural and forestry activities in the watershed. All of this is within the defined watershed. And Camille was on that subgroup. Our septic and inspection subgroup got our work done a bit before the agriculture and forestry group. And so there has been a final draft of that septic and inspection program report provided to the City Council, which has now started the formal process of directing it to the Planning Board for a public hearing and then a recommendation to the Council for first and second readings before the Council. So that Planning Board public hearing is going to be at the Board's next meeting next Tuesday, June 18th. The other ordinance, as I mentioned, took a little longer to get into place, and I believe that the final draft of that is going to be completed today and will be tendered to the council, which, as I understand it, is going to issue a procedural order to the planning board on July 1, which would then be brought before the planning board for its July 9 meeting for a public hearing on that component of the ordinance. These are two large subparagraphs of the same watershed overlay district ordinance. I'm not going to say anything about the substance of these ordinances. I'll leave that to the people who are members of the committee if they wish to say anything.
I don't even need to read my notes, Steve. That's good. That's what I have, is all of these dates.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of the actual dates.
That's why I
So I
would provide that
appreciate that information,
Yeah, yeah.
Steve, regarding that planning board public meetings, and
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be advertised adequately ahead of time.
Yes. Well, the planning board meeting for next week has already been
Right.
subject to notice.
Right.
The agenda for the planning board technically doesn't have to be out until tomorrow afternoon. Usually they publish them around the first of the month. For whatever reason this month, they had not gotten the agenda out as of this morning, so I sent a nudging phone call to the staff to ask that they put the agenda out, but that will be on the agenda for next Tuesday.
We have new tables and those things are annoying, just saying.
Steve, I know other organizations don't allow like the back and forth, but appreciate all the work that you've been doing, and if there's anything that you see on the agenda coming up that might affect water quality,
Oh, yeah,
please make sure Erica, Mike, and Kevin know,
and you too.
and Camille, yeah, you can
Yeah.
just email us.
Yeah, I want to say that from whatever point of view any of the members of these working groups came to be comprising the stakeholder group, everybody cooperated wonderfully, and there was a lot of input from different perspectives, and some people knew a lot more about some subjects than others knew about others. How many pounds of fertilizer can you store in how many bags? how far from the watershed is a lot different from what's the defined setback requirement for safe protection in the shoreline zoning area.
Right.
A lot of different technical subjects.
Yeah, I agree with that. I felt that my subcommittee, and then as we came together, everyone cooperated really well, and we had really good discussions back and forth. So it'll be, if we're able to attend any of the public meetings, I encourage commissioners to do that. So, thank you for that input. Next on our agenda is the water quality and watershed report. Erica?
Sure, so I had, I'll just kind of go off what Steve had mentioned here. So in the back of your packet is a copy of the notice that we get. It comes to me through the mail through Auburn Water, but it's addressed to the commission. So that's that public notice that we get as abutters for the notice of planning board public hearing, which is next Tuesday, June 18th. And the items that are on there that Steve mentioned are looking at proposed amendments that pertain to septic system installation. So it's actually, that's some of the work that we did on the subcommittee, Dan, myself, Mike, and Steve, looking at how can those ordinance sections change but still be protective of the lake. So I think we came up with some good language for that. It's all available on Auburn's website, so I don't want to regurgitate it to you, but that will be up for public hearing. Also included in this notice that we received is a map of the septic systems in the Lake Auburn watershed. And it's hard, you can't read it on this kind of scanned copy, but the different colored areas are looking at if the commission and the city are working together for a septic system inspection program. This is one option for breaking it out for how do we tackle that? How do we go to these septic systems? How are we going to look at it the first year, the second year, third year, fourth year? So this is a way to break it out by, systems closest to the lake and then working your way outward. So that is that map that is also up for a public hearing. And then the last map that is included is looking at the 400-foot setback for lakes, streams, and brooks for a subsurface wastewater field. Excuse me, wastewater fields. So that's just increasing the protections for all of the tributaries that go to Lake Auburn for septics. So those are coming up for next Tuesday's planning board meeting. Also, as Steve said, that's the next meeting that one of these topics will come up at. And then the agricultural zone ordinance changes that Camille was on the working group, those should be coming up at the July 1st council meeting. So that's for the ag zone and within the watershed overlay particularly. So there are changes that hopefully will help limit farming, limit development, those kinds of things that are important to us for water quality for the lake.
And Erica, and forestry too.
Yes, forestry, yep. So that should go to council on July 1st, possibly go to planning board in July as well. So that's kind of the flow of things. We're looking at July, August for some of these septic changes and ag changes to actually go through. I'll keep you updated as, if any of that changes or if we hear more. Also included at the end of this packet is this figure. It doesn't have any additional text with it, but so that is, we had to, we did a lot of work defining the watershed line in that area. So there was the potential that the owner of the Grace Lawn Pit, which is in this area, was going to develop, and that development would actually go into the watershed area. My understanding is that now their development is being proposed, but only outside of the watershed area. So that's what this area to be rezoned as multifamily suburban. That could be developed. And then there's this section in here is area to remain general business. So that could also be developed, but it's just different uses. So So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, because last time I heard from Mike Gatto, it sounded like the owner was going to continue to mine the pit, but I think that they're now working towards developing in that area.
So it's changed again.
Yes, so that's my understanding,
To a much smaller development?
yes, Yeah.
obviously.
it's solely outside of the watershed.
Do you know whether that rezoning has already gone before the city council?
I don't know, I need to check with Eric
Can I
Cousins.
address that?
You may address it.
The area that was rezoned after the hydrogeological modeling was done last December,
Right.
that reduced the area that was in the watershed by a substantial amount and produced an area that was now outside the watershed for the entire length of the Gendron parcel along Grace Lawn Road, but to a varying depth from 700 feet to as much as almost 1,400 feet. Was then not only just deemed to be outside the watershed as a result of that study, but was at the same meeting rezoned back to general business. And there was discussion that the developer was going to utilize that whole parcel for residential development. More recently, the developer or the pit owner said that he didn't intend to pursue that and was going to continue to do his sand, gravel, and blasting operation. But there has been a proposal made to define a limited general business zone, 550 feet deep and 1,200 feet long along Grace Lawn Road, with the balance of that rezoned area that's still outside the watershed, but would now be suburban multifamily rather than general business. In other words, a less intense use. Much of that area is down below the level of Grace Lawn Road by 45 or 50 or more feet. So that matter is going to go to the council for a referral to the planning board. Also on the July 1 meeting for the council and the July 9 meeting for the planning board. There's no development proposal at present. This is simply rezoning. And it's all outside the redefined watershed area.
I had read some of that in the paper as well, Steve.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it keeps changing, as somebody, as Alan just said.
right,
Every week,
right,
there are new rumors circulating around as to who's
Yeah.
doing what to whom.
yeah.
Is it true the new zoning is gonna create more per unit opportunity for housing, more dense?
More than what?
Well, just Evan Sears' comment, I don't remember the numbers he threw out, but he mentioned that this new zoning is gonna be more, could be more intense. Let's say if it was 8 units per acre, it could be 16 now.
Oh, you're talking about the multiplier
Yeah.
effect of LD 2003? Well, that will depend on what any development proposal is. Suburban residential has a certain number of defined units, suburban multifamily has a number of defined units, and I didn't bring my ordinance with me,
Yeah, I didn't have it either, but,
well, it's more than single family.
oh,
Right.
yeah.
Right,
But the proposal that was floated by the developer just about a year ago and submitted to the Maine Department of Transportation for a traffic approval of 1,186 single-family and duplex houses has now been dead for 9 months.
yeah,
The DOT asked the developer for additional materials to follow up. Those materials were not provided, and the DOT said, enough of this. It's a dead issue as of September, so there's no development proposal at all currently pending.
So this map had been shown through the city, and I just wanted to bring it to your
Yeah.
attention. I had not seen it on the city council agenda. If it's going on for July 1, I'll keep my eye out for that. But just so you know, it is all outside of the watershed, but
Right.
as this has been something that we've looked at a lot, just wanted to let you know that sounds like it might be changing from just being dug up to actually buildings be
And that's
good.
confirmed with the aggregate that they're crushing right now. They're taking all the old asphalt and they're laying it out like an impervious area.
Yeah, you can see it. when
Yeah,
you
I
drive
saw
by.
it.
Yeah, we're not sure whether he's building a basketball court or a helicopter pad there or whatever.
Yeah.
Thank you, Erica.
Yeah,
Thank you, Steve.
let's see if I have anything else in here. And just water quality wise, we're doing okay right now. Turbidity is back down. It was a little elevated this spring, I think with all the storms that we had and, late March, early April, it wasn't great, but things seem to have settled out. At least right now, we're back down to about a 0.6 NTU, which is good. Our in-lake sampling has started and our clarity readings, so that's the Secchi disc reading, have gone up consistently week to week, which is great. I don't have it for this week, but our last reading that I had before I sent the agenda out, we were up to almost 9 meters of being able to see down to the water column, which is really good. It's spring getting into summer. We typically see our best clarity in the middle of the summer, and then if we're going to see changes, mid-July, that's when we start to see them. But right now we're doing okay. And for watershed report, I sent a message out to Alan about setting up a meeting with the Turner representatives. I still need to do that, but I think we're in a pretty good place now. I know we had talked about waiting to see what actually happened with the Auburn ordinances as far as septic and ag, but as I said, that's going to continue throughout the summer. Right, we'd have to wait for a long time, so I think at least just sitting down and introducing ourselves, and not that there needs to be an agenda to it, but just, yeah.
What our role is, what questions they may have for us.
Exactly, what our role is, yep. I think that would be good to have, so I'll get that scheduled.
Yeah.
We started our courtesy boat inspections at the Route 4 boat launch, and we've got a couple of projects going on. And one of the couple of questions from our last meeting is, there are a couple lots that are in the closed zone of the lake that were brought to our attention previously, that there was a question of if the commission was interested in acquiring those, and then one of the questions was, if we did not, what would be permitted on those lots that are along, lake shore frontage in the closed zone of the lake, in the watershed overlay, they're in the ag zone. And so I talked with staff at the city of Auburn, and where it's ag zone and watershed overlay district, there are no new residential dwellings are allowed currently. So there could not be, residential development. However, because it still is in the ag zone, these other uses that I've listed here could still happen there. Barns, silos, forest products. You could have farming, you could have livestock, you could have marijuana cultivation, you could have solar farms, or other uses for special exception. So that's just information if we are, contacted about possibly purchasing land, and it's in the watershed and it's in the ag zone. You won't have development for, residential, but you still have agricultural things going on. That might change if the proposed ag ordinances go through this summer. That might be more limited to what people can do, but right now that's how it stands. And then I started to look into the number of septics that are in the upper watershed towns and developing a couple different maps for those. So I'm working with our Auburn GIS staff, it's Greg Jalbert on that, to put together some maps that show, kind of blown up, what are the lots in those towns, because there's not a lot in Hebron, Mine, and Buckfield. It's a really small area. Turner, there's quite a few. And then trying to see if we can pull septic information into that. Might be a little more challenging, but if they're residential, we can probably assume that they have a septic system, because there's no public sewer in
Can I
those
make a
areas.
comment to that? This might be an opportunity with the 20,000 and 20,000, the 40,000, just to get a program up and running, but to use more of the funds in the upper watershed town septic systems that might be more older or pertinent, because basically, I hate to say this, but people who live in the Auburn part of town will be forced to do it no matter what. I mean, you're either gonna get a lien against your property and the city's gonna go and put a new septic system in, through contractors, or they'll get a loan, or they'll be, they'll be, because of the ordinance, they'll be forced to fix their stuff. But the monies that you get through here might have, since we can't force Turner, Mine, and Hebron to replace the septic system, but if there's one right on Little Wilson that's complete failure, I mean, I guess the state would require that anyway, right?
There's a lot of guidelines with the money that we were given. We can't use it to replace somebody's septic system. We can't even use it to necessarily pay somebody else to inspect it. We've been talking about pulling together a meeting with city staff and staff between the two entities to sit down and discuss how we're going to implement that and to best benefit, all the watershed. And, I know Erica just sent that poll out earlier this week. So we're looking to get that kicked off. But yeah, there are a lot of things we can and can't do with that money.
So can you use that money, even though the entity that applied for it wasn't the town of Turner, can that money be used?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's for the watershed.
So
I mean, public education,
covers
outreach,
the watershed.
development of the program.
Whether it's Lewis and Auburn, it still covers any town
Absolutely.
within the watershed.
The watershed affects the lake, which is why we were given the grants, source water protection.
Right.
But we're limited on how we can use the money as far as does it benefit an individual person. You know what I mean?
You can't really give a grant.
Right. No, we can't. No.
It's more education and
Educational,
training.
more.
For development of the program, building of maps, buildings of inspection protocols, setting up the actual inspections, how that, I mean, we can, which is a huge lift. And if we could, do that with these funds, it'll benefit the watershed and assist the city with their new ordinance and maybe some of the other towns that don't have that program. We could do that all.
Yeah, I think the data, like you said, the data collection piece of it will be huge.
Yeah.
And we'll want that information, and that's, yeah.
Or maybe with the data, you can apply for other funding
Yeah.
Absolutely.
that could do that.
Yep.
Like we have all this data now, we know that there are this many systems and mine at this, and we want to propose this, and I'm sure there are other sources that we could use.
Yeah. And we have done, like I said, some of our in-lake and tributary sampling for phosphorus. We've had a few of our samples have come back. There's usually a lag between when we're sampling and when we get results for. Looking at our tributaries, there's a few that I've highlighted in that spreadsheet that I copied in.
Mm-hmm.
Those are known problem sites that we're working to address. There's a site called R2 that comes out of Blanchard Pond that we call, we've named it Blanchard Pond. It's on Route 4 near Wallingford. It comes underneath Route 4 and comes out into the lake. So that system is actually one that I'm working with Ty and Bond on this summer to help stabilize that stream system and hopefully minimize what's eroding out of that stream system, because we know there's phosphorus in the soils there, in the sediment, and then it's in the water too. There is some uptake ahead of that, but by the time it gets there and is outputting into the lake, it's still elevated. So hopefully that we'll see some improvement with that stream bank stabilization project this summer. And then one of the other sites on here is the Townsend Brook outlet that comes under Lakeshore Drive that we also know is historically an issue. And for in-lake phosphorus, those numbers actually look great. We haven't had any results over 12 micrograms per liter, which, just for perspective, we try to, I think we're comfortable with readings below that. So there's a lot of 8s, 9s, and 10s for micrograms per liter in our actual lake. So that's good. We get nervous if it starts to get higher than those numbers. It just means there's more available. Well, actually, the orthophosphorus is what's available for use for algae, and that's all low. That's 1s or below. But we just don't like to see that potential food source for algae growth. So as long as those numbers stay relatively low for the rest of the season, that's what we like to see. And I think we're still seeing benefits from doing the alum treatment. It was 5 years ago now. We'll keep an eye on water quality data this summer and see if there's anything that we need to consider this year or next year. And that covers
I
my
also
report.
in a couple other locations on that graph B1,
Yes.
very high,
Oh, shoot, thank you for, that's the one that I missed highlighting, yes,
72.
72, yes.
27.
Where's that one?
Yeah, what do you-
That's by the boat launch over that area.
So, yeah, so B1 is that Blanchard Pond that I mentioned. Oh, are you thinking of Bates one?
Yeah, it's identified as Bates 1 here,
Oh, okay.
which is not even the boat launch, it's in that little, around the corner.
We have a couple, I think that one is actually Blanchard Pond, but we have the same name for it as that Bates site one.
Oh.
So let me clarify
Could you,
that.
Yeah, check on that one.
Yeah. Because typically that's the Blanchard Pond, which runs into R2, and we usually see high at E1, a little bit lower at R2, and then a little bit lower at Site 2.
Yeah, it actually makes sense, because if you look at the time of the sampling, B1 was 5 minutes before R2, so you're probably right, that was.
But we need to fix that,
Yeah, you need to fix, that table, just because it's confusing, that'd be
Yeah.
helpful. And the other one I noticed, what you have highlighted is 27. Well, did you highlight it anyway? Which is up there by the basin.
Oh, that's,
Is that a small stream that comes in up there?
I have the number 27 highlighted, but it's for R2. Is that what we're looking at?
I was looking at, let me see. Oh, yeah. Well, it's up in March, it was at 21, but it did drop down, so it might have been just a runoff or something, but
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
But what is that, is that a little stream that's at 27 that's flowing over into,
Yes.
you see where it is, it's up by the road.
Yep. So there's a couple well, I think there's
Is
two
it a
culverts.
culvert there or
Yes.
something? Okay. All right, thank you, I was just curious about those two.
Eric, I had a question for you.
Mhm.
You and I had met at that new home that had been built up there behind Little Wilson.
Yes.
And we weren't happy to see that behind the house where they had dug out the septic, there's all this water that had washed out and was running right down the hill, right into Little Wilson. Even though the retention pond seems to be functioning more properly,
Yes.
which is a good thing. But there's this new issue. And so trying to have, at that point, of course, the homeowner was going to talk to the construction company to find out what the plan was, to mitigate that, because certainly that was quite a bit of water that was moving
Yeah.
down the hill. Do you have any updates on that?
Yes,
As to
I
what
do.
happened, or how that was resolved? Or-
Thank you for bringing that up.
Of course,
So,
of course.
yes, after we met out there, so this is a development uphill from Little Wilson Pond. It's Wilson Bluffs, or Bluff Drive is the name of the road up there. So it's a very steep slope from this development down, like straight down to Little Wilson. So there's a new home built, and it already is at the base of this, it was a maintenance road. It's built down here, and then it just goes like that down to Little Wilson. So there's a new home built there. So, yeah, and this is all kind of the year before. Alan had noticed that from the detention pond that was existing there already, that's supposed to provide some uptake of phosphorus from the homes that were already built and retain water there. That had failed, and there was water during those big storms coming out from that down the hill to the pond. So we looked at that, but since that time, there's a home that's now built right next to it,
Right next to the pond.
right next to the
The
pond.
retention pond.
Right next to it.
Yes, and so when we went out
Great
and
problem.
looked, the ground, this was March, I think, the ground was not stabilized, and they had lost some of the sediment from that
They
lot.
washed out, because
Downhill.
the stones we had, it's washed right out.
Yes.
There's nothing holding that water from going right down the hill, because the pitch just goes right
Yeah, there was
directly
no-
down into Little Wilson.
No barrier. So after we had that site visit, I called the contractor, and it was interesting. Their response was, "Oh, I wish I knew you were coming. We would have had it cleaned up." I thought, Well, what? Of course you would.
That's a wrong
that's
answer,
not-
wrong answer.
No, no, I said, well, that's neither here nor there, so I said,
So
you know,
you knew
you need
about
to
it.
have, you need to have some sort of barrier there, whether it's silt
Did you
fence
tell
or
them you were
hay
going the
bales
next day?
or berm, yeah, you know, something there. And so when I went out again, they did have that in place. There now is grass growing on that slope, but at the time, I mean, it was March and April when you and I were out there, and then I went again, and there was nothing holding that in place. And then we had a ton of rain, and so it did move off site. It did move downhill towards the pond. They definitely had some erosion issues there. But last time I went out, there was grass taking. The ground was still soft, so if we had any more of those big rainstorms, it would not have stayed put. They did have silt fence up. It looked like it was holding back, you know, some of the sediment, but my question to the developer was, what is your plan here when you pull that fencing? That's not a permanent BMP. And I haven't gotten an answer back from that yet.
Yeah, and the homeowner is very cooperative.
He is, he's
understands-
great, I will
he's,
say.
You know, he's pro protected water, you know, sources as well.
Yes.
It's more about the construction company and
So
finding
they
an
didn't slope
appropriate
it at all,
resolution.
so it would go into the retention pond from that property?
No.
That might be tricky to do.
It would be, yeah. I
That was
don't
not
know if
possible with
they
that law.
Could.
Was it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, probably
Um,
not, probably not.
They even had to build some of the other areas up to help control where the water was flowing. So the homeowner is very cooperative and wants, you know, wants to see it corrected. So I'll be going back out there again.
Thank you, yeah, for keeping track of that.
Yeah, so the last that I saw, they had silt fence in place, it was retaining some of that. There was grass growing, but my comment to the developer was, you know, what's your long-term plan here? Because I don't know that just having it seeded and having grass growing there will hold on to it.
I have my doubts, you know, and if you have a couple of big,
Right.
rain events.
What's that geofabric that we put down along Lakeshore Drive where it's like gridded?
Oh, yeah, like
It was like a
geotech
gridded
style.
mat, and then you put your loam inside of it and seed that
It's a
because
geogrid.
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, that would be
rafting.
something that would just, I mean,
Well, it's actually like an interlocking
Oh,
sill
okay.
that expands out.
Rigid.
What do you do?
Yeah, it's about that tall.
no, it would prevent the soil from washing out.
Prevents us, holds the soil in place.
You hold the soil and the grass seed and everything in place. Like Erica's saying, yeah, the grass is going to grow, but is the roots and the grass strong enough to hold it given the slope? You know, this would help with that. Either that or remove all the grass and riprap it. You know, would be the only other thing given the slope what you would be able to do. But I don't know if that's
And they do have a good chunk of the side of their property is riprap.
just given the slope. I mean, behind their house is like a 20% grade. I mean, it drops.
Wow.
It does.
They have a lot of mulch and they have a
Sounds like
lot of
great
riprap.
site to put your house.
Well, and you get a view because of it,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm sure.
There's no view.
Not
Oh,
really.
there's no view?
It's thick wooded.
Oh,
That's very
If he
good.
was
Oh,
It's just quiet.
talking,
Yeah.
It's just
Right-
a
right
nice
next to the
tucked away,
detention pond.
quiet
Well,
lot,
that
but
might be something to email the contractor about, is this whatever it's called.
Either that, I'd say water bars with riprap.
Yeah,
One or the other.
yeah.
okay.
But he's really welcome us to come out at any point.
Yeah, the homeowner has been great.
Very
He wants it
cooperative.
resolved.
Yeah, I'm sure he wants
Of course he
the
does.
contractor to take care of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, other questions for Erica on? Great, thank you, Erica. Clerk and staff reports. Mike, do you have anything you'd like to report on?
I apologize, my mind is not here.
I can understand that.
What did I have to bring up? I had a couple of things we've been talking about.
I was just going to bring up the open seats.
Yes, that's a good point. So, yeah, Brad Kowalski did resign today, effective immediately. We're going to have our agenda for next week's water trustee meeting going out. So we will get that on the agenda to advertise for his seat. And the trustees can reappoint somebody or appoint somebody to fill the remainder of Brad's term in July. They're also due to reappoint their trustee representative, which is currently Dan So that's would also be due in July, so they can do them both at the same time. So yeah, that's what's going on that front. We have been, Steve provided the great update. We could talk about that, but he already covered it. We have been going to the meetings, following that and what's happening at City Council and the Planning Board. So outside of that, I guess the only other thing I would mention is, it's nice to have Skelton, Tainter, and Abbott here. Just my personal opinion, and maybe my opinion as superintendent of the Auburn Water District, just the lesson we've kind of learned from the last couple of years with representation and conflictions. Maybe it's not a bad idea for the commission to have a different attorney than the Water District. We have been using Eaton Peabody almost exclusively since we've been under litigation.
The Water District or LawPac?
The Water District has been
Okay.
using Eaton Peabody. Eaton Peabody has never done anything for the commission, just the
Right.
Water District.
Right.
Because we've been using them so much for the litigation, it's just been easier for me to say, well, why don't you work on this as well? They're becoming more and more familiar with us. I know there was a question by Dan regarding having Skelton and Tainter look at the memo that Eaton Peabody prepared for the water trustees. Certainly, if that's what the commission wants to do, we can task Skelton Tainter with it to have them cross-check that or provide their own legal opinion of the Water District's charter. I know I've heard from the City of Auburn that they have had their attorney look at our charter and they resulted in the same opinion as Eaton Peabody. So they also did the same thing that we did, but they did not share with me that memo that they got.
Mm-hmm.
But if this commission wishes to have Skelton and Tainter provide their opinion, that's certainly something that you could do. Just let me know what the commissioners would like, I guess. But that's all I had. Like I said, sorry I'm a little scattered.
Yeah, it only affects how we update our protection of Lake Auburn bylaws, which has been a really good document for the district for all these years. So I think maybe it's something we just need to use that second opinion and go forward with the POLA, knowing that we can't tell those guys what to do. We can ask them. That's about it.
I mean, regards to that point, building a relationship with the upper watershed towns, we would want to encourage them and ask them to enact ordinances in their own towns mirroring what we have. So, I mean, I think partnership's always going to go longer than
Hopefully.
the adversarial.
Litigation.
Yeah.
It's probably the best way to start, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Rather than,
We can start a dialogue, and I
Right.
think that's important.
that's
Part of this meeting is just opening that dialogue up.
Yeah.
So they understand where we're coming from, maybe what we're hoping that maybe it's something that they're willing to do. I'm saying some ordinances around their towns to.
Yes.
Which helps support what we're doing,
In their cars.
Yeah, it's brutal right now.
It's just gonna go through pretty quick.
yeah. That's all I had. Unless
And I just wanted, I noticed it got dark. I wanted to ask Kevin for the Lewiston seat. Anybody selected?
There was one person that was interested, had sat on the board before, put an application in, it was acknowledged the other day, so it's not a staff or a council appointment, so we've got to advertise to be fair to all interested citizens, so that process is starting, and likewise, we've been, without an administrator and some of the budget issues, we've been a little behind on that posting, so that'll be going out. 'Cause we
That's
gotta-
right, it's a Lewiston resident, right, but not,
Correct.
not counselor, not
Correct.
staffer, okay.
Yep, I think the council or the, can weigh in on selection, I gotta re-familiar with, I haven't done that, so. I gotta re-familiarize on how we would pick if there were multiple applicants, and what that process would be, but we're gonna go through that process.
Great. That was the only other thing I had under the clerk and staff.
We didn't need this.
Hopefully it's not raining in Turner.
I know. Oh, I just saw
you
some
guys
light.
can't leave now.
Jeez.
Hope nobody has an open trench and they're working on the water main right now.
Oh,
Yeah, I
no.
bet, yeah.
One supercell just coming through and then it's just gonna be rain and we'll be done in an hour.
That's it. All right.
All right, thank you both for those reports. Next on the agenda is the old business Lake Auburn stakeholder group update, which.
I think we've kind of covered that
Yeah,
one.
we've covered that.
Yes.
Thanks to Steve and Erica and other people, Mike. So, are there any commission questions about that stakeholder group that remain? Great. Next is new business. Under that is funding for municipal partnership initiative project with Maine DOT, Mike and Kevin.
Yeah, so Kevin and I and Erica and Chris, our water quality treatment manager, have a meeting. You know, it's interesting, the difference between the Auburn Water District and the city of Lewiston is the district's on a calendar year budget, Lewiston is on a fiscal year budget. You know, a year and a half ago, we wanted to, you know, plan and work on a project where we would study water quality and potentially extend the intake out into Lake Auburn. You know, Auburn Water District wanted to go ahead with that like a year ago, but we had to wait for Lewiston to get that into their CIP and get that approved as part of their budget. They've gotten that. They're actually at that point now where that is funded. Coincidentally, the problems that have been occurring from a severe storms out on Lakeshore Drive has caused erosion and brought to light the failure of the culvert. Erica has been extremely diligent in working with DOT and kind of prodding them, when are you going to address this? Unfortunately, they promise you some, 10 years out, we'll get it into our CIP. But one olive branch that they did offer to us was in the form of an MPI project. An MPI project is basically where they say, we're going to fund 50% of this, but you manage it, you own it, you do the project, and you provide the other 50% of the funding. We kind of had a tight timeline to respond to that, and so the Water District accepted that agreement. We signed it. If we are not able to do this work in 3 years, then basically we lose the funding. Wow.
I did say supercell.
That is crazy. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's hard to concentrate and talk. So the Water District has committed to that. We did reach out to the City of Auburn to see if they would partner on this project. They have declined to partner. We have, as I said, we've met with Kevin. We've requested that Lewiston partner with the Auburn Water District on this MPI. But now it's a matter of figuring out, well, how do we fit this into their budget? Does he need to request more funds? Does it, I don't know if you could talk about that more, or where that puts you, Kevin, but.
So the city of Lewiston, we had some funds set aside for a possible, we thought we were going to do a larger alum treatment dose than we did. So we have some money in reserve set aside for that, as well as the project to extend the intake. Hail.
But I don't see that.
I don't see anything.
We should go out and take a look.
I would stay clear,
Let me know how it is.
stay clear of the
Carry
windows,
on.
indoors.
So so we're gonna have to go forward to the.
You knew that was happening.
There you go.
Not surprised by this.
I don't see hail, but
You guys have a
our
generator?
emergency lights in here don't work either, so you'll be in the dark.
So you don't have a
We discovered
generator?
that once. No,
Um,
no generator.
So at this point, I've got to formalize a memo to get it before city council to consider and then reappropriate funds to participate. So they're going to one meeting a month, so either in July or August. We'll be getting that on the agenda to try to have some discussion.
One of the important things that Mike brought up about learning the intake. Before, you know, we spend any money to move the intake, we're gonna be doing a lot of quality testing to make sure, that started already, right? There's a buoy there
Oh,
for the future.
we have not,
intake site.
no.
But that's something that we're gonna be trying to do before we spend money to move the intake.
You have to
make
study
sure
it
that the
first.
Water is better.
So, a concern that was raised about water
You wanna
quality.
sit here?
Where would you want to put the depth? Would you want to go deeper? We've talked about going deeper, but if you have recycling and phosphorus because of anoxic conditions, going deeper may not be better water quality.
Right.
So there is a discussion on where we go there.
There'll be some science.
So I think the bigger thing though with this MPI project, why it's a higher priority in my view, is it looked like coffee coming out of that wetland through that culvert, coming into the wetland.
There's a lot of
The
decay.
canyons, the color, turbidity, calcium culvert. So this MPI, also part of that discussion was, you know, ideally we want to have that looked at and say, how do we prevent debris from coming in, pollutants from coming into that wetland?
Yeah.
So that needs to be studied before we just straight replace the culvert. And DOT did acknowledge that they can't just replace the culvert in the light diameter, or even if they changed it, they would need to go to an open bottom arch, which there's nothing to prevent solids, sediment, debris from. It would remove what restrictions we do have and increase the amount coming in. Those are my concerns. So I think we've done a lot of work, but it's a really good discussion, and it's nice that DOT came to the table and we had some discussion about that. So that'll probably be in July and August as far as looking to move ahead with the MPI plan.
So with that,
Auburn Water District through DOT, I think it's a reimbursement,
so
right,
it
Mike?
would be still through the district, so I didn't know.
Still go through the district. It's whether City of Auburn wants to participate in the 50%, which is a quarter, 25% of the overall project.
We could split our 50% into thirds. Right? That would be the more ideal.
Yeah, Auburn Water, City of Auburn, and Lisbon. Yes, potentially. That'll be for future discussion on that.
As you said, Kevin, even if we change this culvert, it's not gonna address the sediment that's coming into the wetland.
Right. Well, we also heard from DOT that we might have, because there's existing state and local rules that you need to allocate for fish patch. And so they want to do it at natural bottom arch. So DOT has no ability to not put one of those in, just put a regular round culvert in. Whereas DOT thought we would be able to take the position of, we can't change it to the new style, we need to keep it and look at some sort of, you know, slow the velocity, still allow for fish passage, but do not, you know, don't impede that, but don't put up some berm or something to control and not just have a straight output from the wetland. That's the big thing I think we saw and we're concerned with is continued output from that wetland, either sediment, piece of color. And there's a lot of upstream analysis that needs to take place on that, and some of the other culverts that have changed.
Have we done any kind of science to figure out whether or not the wetland is a nutrient absorbing advantage to the lake, or is it decaying matter that's creating more phosphorus?
So the studies I'm aware of were done by either Bates, grad program, and they looked at, they were seeing an export of iron. So dissolved iron is coming out of there, and that's some of the deposition. I think just through our general observations during the storm events, you can see that we're possibly pushing out sediment. There's no scour that really is necessarily going through the wetland, but
Because I mean, that's
If
an
you look-
opportunity to move the road further away from the lake, to fill in the wetland, that's a detriment. And you would get those permissions through state if we had data that said it was worse for the lake to have a wetland there.
I mean, realistically, if you were to look at it just as an ecosystem, not even worry about the road, you come up with a different solution than changing this culvert. And I think that's the direction I would like to see it go is, you know, look at an ideal, you know, meeting the ecology of that and then our lake quality. So, and not just determine that we need to change the culvert to save the road.
Right.
Yeah, because generally wetlands like that are really good at slowing down sedimentation and velocity coming into it. But if you get an overwhelming amount of flow, which sounds like the 3 new culverts up at Tot Lot and stuff has increased the amount of flow coming into it, and high storm events has created more of a problem.
Absolutely.
So,
It's well put.
Yeah,
so
so
it's not
culvert
like the,
is passing more now, where it was
Exactly.
holding back before.
before the retention of the wetland was really optimizing that, but now you've
Yeah.
got too much coming through it.
And then there's a set of 3 culverts that are between that Tot Lot one,
Right,
and then this outlet under Lakeshore Drive. It
right,
is a bit of a restriction, but what, you know, that has to be part of kind of looking back up the system, like
Yeah.
you said. You've got this one outlet under Lakeshore Drive, okay, if you just replace that, but then you open it up, and you're letting a lot more through. Do you keep it somewhat restricted, but you've got to manage the amount of volume coming through?
that's right.
There's a lot that has, it's unfortunately, it's not as simple, just a replacement in kind.
Right. Yeah. And I guess this money from MDOT is strictly for replacement of the culvert, is that correct?
For the culvert and the study design, Kevin and I mean, Kevin, Erica, and Chris met, what was that, a week ago? And one of the things that I was curious about, well, what if we as an entity, we hire an engineer and we study this, and the recommendation may not be to replace the culvert? You know, like Kevin said, maybe it's something different.
Right.
Would DOT still cover our funding for the study? And would we be penalized if we then opt out of, well, we don't agree with just replacing the culvert? You know, we think there's a bigger solution that needs to be had. The good news is we did just get on the hook to do this feasibility work, and I think that might broaden this a little bit and maybe open up the potential of funding. There might be a better deal than this MPI coming if they look at all the components, not just the water quality, the failing culverts, the erosion. There's a safety concern out there as well. The city is very concerned with, in addition to the numerous accidents, there's been 4 that have wound up in the lake within a 1-year period. There's a lot of issues with Lakeshore Drive, so if they do an overall feasibility study and come up with different recommendations that, you know, why would you spend $1.5 million replacing this one? Really, maybe you should do away with that section of road, reroute it a
Right,
safer route, or do something different.
right,
Especially when you factor in the safety thing.
yeah.
We actually,
I was gonna just ask about the main infrastructure adaptation fund, you familiar with that?
I've heard of it.
So that program, July 1st, it's $75,000 for scoping, and then there's implementation money, but the next application for that, and I believe it's been like almost, I think there was another one like 6 months ago, because we helped Minot apply. They got $50,000 to scope this, whatever road it is, Broad something road that always floods. And so they're getting that, they got that grant through the main infrastructure adaptation fund. And so it's kind of like, you know, it's for infrastructure related to climate resiliency. So like they got that.
You shared that.
Yeah, so, and the next, I think it's July 1st for the next round. And they increased the maximum to 75 now for scoping. So that could be a potential source.
Related, we did have a meeting that was hosted by the drinking water program of the waivered, unfiltered systems at the state with DOT representatives there. Just because through the last couple of years, some of the legislative discussions, we brought up that, you know, we have a Class A lake, we have a drinking water, and it's not at risk because of all the efforts that this group is doing as well as the towns and the city. But when it comes to, worker, they're not changing their protocols. DOT is going in and doing maintenance, whether it's the culverts, the road. There's no considerations that this is a drinking water supply for two cities.
Yeah.
So,
there's an informational Zoom on that tomorrow, on the MIAF program, so I can send that.
Isn't it from 2 to 3?
Yes.
I have another, I'll try and make that. I have another meeting from.
I can send it to you. and
I did
then
get it
do you
today.
want it?
I have another meeting tomorrow from 2:30 to 4.
Send it. All right, I'll send it to Erica.
okay.
Yeah, I have another meeting 2:30 to 4 tomorrow, but then that one might get pushed back a half an hour, which if it does, then I can do that one for the grant.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
sure, say
Zach on our staff has already done these applications before, and I'm sure he'll be on that tomorrow, but I'll send it to you guys,
Thank you.
you and Mike, because Kevin doesn't care, he's gonna be doing something better than that.
Dominican?
Yep,
Oh, well, there you go.
family vacation.
Horseback riding on the beach or something like interesting like that?
Probably a pool bar, I'm thinking.
Sounds like that.
Swim up, of course.
That's right.
Well, thanks for looking, all the time and effort going into this, because it is an important source of problems for the lake, for sure.
Yep. I mean,
This isn't just isolated to that one culvert. So, yeah. Well, we're out of electricity, so our video is off, so.
Oh, the video's on.
No videos on.
They can hear you, they just can't see you probably.
Oh, okay, they can hear me
You
now.
can take your flashlight out. Sorry, but.
So the next thing on the agenda is other business, so I don't know if there is any other business.
need to file to get a generator for AvCon.
That is MIAF application.
Does anyone have any additional things they want to discuss today? One thing we might want to discuss is our next meeting date, which our regular scheduled time is in September. Can't read the actual date.
11th.
11th, okay, thank you. There is a tentative date of August 14th. So I don't know if there's any urgency to having an August meeting, or if September meeting would be sufficient. September.
Unless something.
The process, I'm not sure if Lewiston would have another representative by that point in August.
So maybe we should wait till September and maybe hope that Lewiston and also the Auburn representatives.
Auburn
will
should be
present.
filled by then, yeah.
Should be filled by then.
Yep.
I don't
So
foresee
you
a
keep
problem.
the August 14th placeholder, that way there are people, if you have to convene. will
Oh,
be
if there
available.
happens to be an emergency that Mike or Kevin or Erica inform us about, we can always
Yep.
call that. But at this point, we'll plan to meet on September 11th.
Sounds good.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So, second.
All those in favor? Unanimous? All right, thanks
I think it's
everyone
safe for
for
you guys.
weathing the storm.
I'm not sure I would have recommended
It's
that.
still
Wow.
drizzling. Does Progressive do hail damage?
I know, right?
I'm gonna have to ask Flo.
Wow.
Right now, I'm not getting lit up, but I don't know.